Hi and welcome to Literary Hype. I am Stephanie, your Literary Hype Woman, and today is a really good excuse to get out some ice cream because this book series is probably going to make you want ice cream. I'm talking to Susannah Nix. Her current series of romance novels is the King family series, which is based on a family that owns a creamery, and this family tree is all kinds of craziness, so I definitely had to ask her how she keeps it all straight, and I had so many other questions about her most recent book in this series, Pint of Contention. So here is my conversation with Susannah Nix. Welcome to Literary Hype. So you are a very busy writer with so many books. The one you're talking about right now that just came out is Pint of Contention. So introduce us to that story a little bit.
So this is the third book in my King family series, which is a small town series set in a little town in Texas, where the main business is an ice cream company that's owned by the King family. And so this is book 3, which is about Ryan, who is actually a stepson of the sort of patriarch of the family. So he's not exactly one of the brothers, but he's a stepbrother. And he's a giant 6'5" Highland Games athlete and firefighter who I introduced actually like 4 books ago, and people have been dying for his book ever since they first got to look at him.
So you say you introduced him 4 books ago, and this is the 3rd book. So you want to explain how that all works with your special universe?
So this series is a spinoff of my first book series, the chemistry lessons series, which was all my STEM heroines. And those books were actually like closed door, and they took place in LA. But then the last book in that series, I spun off this new series from. So the heroine from that last book moves to this small town in Texas. And then I throw the door wide open and the books get steamy in the new series.
What made you decide to open the door and start writing more steamy books?
I mean, I started out writing fan fiction. Like I wrote fan fiction for like 20 years before I started publishing books. So that was kind of how I learned to write, was the steamy stuff. That was what I was reading. That was what I was, writing a lot of, not always, but, I would go back and forth because I don't necessarily have a very strong preference, but I think a lot of readers do. I think a lot of readers find book romance more engaging when it's a little bit more open door. And so when I first started publishing under, my name, I knew all my friends and former bosses and relatives were going to be reading the books. And I was like, I'm just going to write closed door. That's going to be good enough. And then after I got more comfortable, sort of talking about romance and just kind of owning it, I was like, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to write steamy and tell my mother-in-law not to read them.
Do you feel like the environment has changed in its acceptance of romance over the last couple of years?
I don't really know, because I don't really know. I'm so in my own little like romance landia bubble. I don't know what's like outside the romance landia bubble. Like everyone I interact with is a romance reader or writer, pretty much, other than like a few of my real life friends who've always liked romance. So I don't know what it's like for the rest of the world, actually. You probably know better than me.
Okay, well, as a bookseller, yes, it has changed dramatically. And like, at least in my opinion, I feel like the pandemic was a big catalyst for it, especially for me. Like I didn't read romance until the pandemic. And then Tessa Bailey entered my life. But like that comfort read of,
I think we were all looking for comfort then, yeah.
The King family, they're kind of a hot mess.
They're a huge hot mess.
There are so many of them. How do you keep them all, like their characters, all straight in your head when there are so many?
It is hard. I have regrets. Originally, it was actually the idea for the family was a little bit inspired by Succession. It was like Succession, but not quite as horrible. And so it's sort of meant to be one of those, big drama families where everybody's always kind of, picking at each other and fighting and wrangling. And they have these really complex, layered relationships with each other. And I really like sort of showing non-traditional families and people in my books. And so I really wanted it to be, there's a lot of romance series that are based on, a family of siblings, and it's like 6 brothers or 4 brothers or 3 brothers, or however many brothers. And, but I really wanted to show a more non-traditional family. And so this is a very blended family where the patriarch's been married 3 different times. And so he has kids by 3 different wives, and then he has an adopted son, and then he's got this stepson that he's, taken into the family. And so it's just a really complex, sort of family tree, which I have a bunch of notes on, and I often mess myself up and screw up, and I get stuff wrong. Like I completely messed up their ages at one point, and I had to go back and like totally fix a bunch of stuff in one of my manuscripts as I was working on it, because I realized I completely messed it up. And so that could be really hard to keep track of. One of my readers recently actually did an infographic of the family tree that she made, which is amazing, because I've been trying to make one, and it's so complicated. Like trying to do a family tree with like step siblings and half siblings and like deceased mothers and divorced mother, like it's a lot.
It is so much, but it provides so you've got a lot of ground that you can cover with this series just by virtue
but
of
I have to re-explain it. Like I have to re-explain all the relationships to each other and who everyone is in every book, because I want readers to be able to enter the series at any book in the, they don't have to start at the beginning. So if they pick up book 3 first, I have to tell them who all these people are and what their relationships to each other are. So that's like kind of a lot of an exposition I have to sort of try and slide in there without being too clunky about it.
Have you like figured out a way to master that art of exposition without exposition?
Honestly, I do a lot of copying and pasting from previous books. Like I'll just, I kind of will like be like, okay, how did I say this in book 1? Okay, I'm just gonna copy that and then move it around a little, like rearrange it a little bit. Like instead of trying to reinvent the wheel every time, I kind of just like
work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
So with Ryan and Maggie's story, so Ryan has a bit of a secret that he's keeping from everyone, but we learn it right off the bat in this story, and that his dad has ALS. What made you choose that particular disease, and how does that kind of drive Ryan's story?
I don't have a personal connection to ALS, so it wasn't something like that. I knew I wanted him to have a secret, and I wanted it to be something where, he was sort of thinking about his future with dread, and it was holding him back from living his life. And so I wanted him to have a big question mark over his future. And I started sort of researching diseases, and there was a storyline on House a really long time ago. I think it was Olivia Wilde's character who had a parent who died of ALS. And so she had that same sort of question mark hanging over her future. Is she going to take the test? And is it going to turn out that she's got the gene and she might get it? And, a whole thing. And so I think I was a little bit inspired by that House episode. There's some other episodes I watch a ton of TV. So I get a lot of my ideas from TV in addition to books. And so I've seen some other sort of TV shows where they kind of incorporated sort of these genetic inherited diseases. And there's a lot of different ones that I looked at. And then in the end, I decided to go ahead with ALS and use ALS because it was just the most well-known. And there was the big ice bucket challenge a few years ago. And so I feel like people have really heard of it, and it's not, I don't have to explain some super obscure disease to people.
And with Maggie, so I love Maggie so much. She's boss babe. Was there anything that kind of inspired her character and why she was the one for Ryan?
I knew I wanted to put him with someone really strong, both physically and emotionally strong. Someone with a strong personality, because he's a big guy with a big personality, and he's really sweet. And so I kind of like to, stick out opposites together. So I was like, okay, well, if Ryan's a big teddy bear sweetheart, obviously he needs to end up with some hard as nails woman that's just, not going to be that impressed by him. And her job, a lot of her personality came from her job. I think I really started with, why is she in town? and what is she doing there, and how does this tie in to the larger story of the family and the company. And so a lot of her personality came from thinking about what it would be like to do a job like that, and how it would kind of mold your personality.
So with Ryan and Maggie's story being part of the King family series, which is a spin-off of the chemistry series, and this one is not the end of the King family series, but it's also a spin-off, starting a spin-off, another branch. How do you keep all of these overlapping timelines straight?
So the timeline part of it is pretty hard. That was actually what I screwed up, is I have to always remember what year it is during the book. Like I try to leave details out of the books so that I'm not boxing myself in. And so if I do make mistakes, it's less noticeable to the readers. But I have notes saying this book takes place during these months in this year. And if I mess up what year it is, then it messes up their birth dates and how old because I know what year they're all born, what year they all graduated from high school. Like I have all these notes and lists and stuff. And my editor actually makes a spreadsheet for every book she edits for me. And that includes all that, like whenever I include biographical information about a character or a description of them or their birth date or something like that, she includes that all in the spreadsheet or in her style sheets. So I can just go back and double check all of that, as well as I do a lot of searching in the published books, trying, what color were their eyes again? Are we sure about that?
You kind of have like a series Bible that's more like just notes and not like an actual document.
It's a series Bible. Well, I have my Word doc series Bible, which is it's the document that I first started brainstorming ideas for the series when I was first planning it. And I planned this series before I wrote the 6th book in the chemistry lessons series, because I knew book 6 was going to spin off this. So I needed to plan this series and know what I was spinning off before I could come up with an idea for that book. And actually the town had a different name, and I've never fixed the title of the doc. It still has the wrong town name in it. And like, it's just got all this, it's just a mess. It's like a peek inside my brain. It's utter chaos. Like no one would ever understand it or be able to make sense of it. So like I refer to that, but then I also refer to my editor's style sheets, which are much more organized. And then I'm gradually trying to build a wiki, putting all of that together into like an actual Wikipedia type thing just for me to look stuff up and save stuff.
What is your writing process like?
Painful. I've got ADHD that was only diagnosed a couple of years ago, and so I finally realized that's why I'm such a slow writer and why I struggle so much to really get the words out. And lately I've been having a lot more trouble. I think aging is making it worse. And so I write all day, every day, pretty much. I find if I take days off, I lose momentum. So I try to write at least part of it every day. And I'm a natural early riser. So I just get up, get a cup of coffee, sit down and start writing. And I'll take breaks throughout the day, but I pretty much work all the way through the day until dinner time. And I don't get as much done as it seems like I should, considering how many hours I'm sitting there working on it.
I mean, but as many books as you have, I feel like you're getting a lot done.
I am. Part of that is that, I mean, originally, when I first started publishing, I was only putting out like 2 books a year, maybe 3. And then there was a period where I was like, I'm really going to like really try to concentrate and just write as fast as I can and put out books as fast as I can. And I was managing to put out, the last 2 years, I think I put out 4 or 5 books a year. And some of that was that I had started writing them well in advance of when I started publishing them. And then now they've finally all caught up. And if you've read Pint of Contention and you get to the end and it says that book 4 in the King family series is coming out in 2024, because I am no longer going to try to write 4 books a year. I am going back to writing 1 or 2 books a year now, and just giving myself a little bit of a break because I am really on the verge of burnout. So it's going to be slower from now on.
And we can't have burnout at this point in the series.
No, I got to finish it. Like I've got 3 more books in the King family series planned out, and I've got 4 books in the Kilt series planned out. So that's like 7 books I still have to write. So yeah, it's just going to take a while.
Well, I guess we can wait for them. So with the 4th book, That one is meant to be. What can you tell us a little bit about that one before it comes out?
I mean, if you've read Pint of Contention, there's a big surprise at the end. I like to do that in the King family series. Usually there's a sort of a cliffhanger that teases the next book and gets you excited for it. And so meant to be, the teaser is Nate announces that he's engaged. So you can maybe make some guesses about what the tropes are going to be for that book. Nate is a lot of people really love Nate, which surprises me because he's hard to love. He's a cranky bastard. He's really closed off, and nobody in the family really gets along with him very well. So, but people are surprisingly excited for Nate's book, and his fiance's name is Sunshine, which is me being extremely literal and writing a grumpy sunshine trope where the heroine is literally named Sunshine, because I was like, I'm gonna do that. That's hilarious.
That is hilarious, because especially like the free spirit vibes are very strong, and so I'm very excited for this story. It's gonna be great. I know it's gonna.
Yeah, I'm excited to write it. Like like part of this town, even though it's a Texas town, it's not a conservative Texas town. It's one of those cool, eccentric Texas town that has a lot of hippies in it, and a lot of, there's a big art community, and so it's it's a little bit like Austin used to be, kind of like Marfa or Kerrville, those kinds of towns in Texas that have these really cool cultures and stuff going on, and it attracts a lot of sort of odd ducks to it, and really encourages individuality. And so Sunny is going to be one of those kind of more hippie types. She works at a garden and feed store in town. Her mom owns it. So she's very much a nature loving, kind of person, which is the exact opposite of like buttoned up, expensive business suit Nate. So that's going to be interesting.
It's going to be very interesting. Do you have a favorite King sibling or a King family character?
I mean, they're all kind of my favorites. Every time when I was writing Wyatt's book, Wyatt was my favorite. When I started writing Tanner's book, Tanner became my favorite. Then Ryan was my favorite. So I guess Nate's going to become my favorite when I start his book.
What kind of research does it take for you to put behind these books, since there's like, you've got your sciencey ones and now your business, like the ice cream business, and you kind of explore different facets of that business in each book?
Yeah,
like what kind of research goes into putting this together?
A lot of Googling. It depends. Like, part of the reason I stopped writing the STEM heroine books is because it was too much research. Like having to teach myself a science profession was just really hard. And I was running out of people I knew personally who had these jobs. Like I kind of used all my STEM friends up at this point. So I do tend to base a lot of characters' jobs on people that I know. A lot of my characters' jobs I've had my husband help because he works in IT. So he does something not quite what Maggie did, but something very similar. So I spent a lot of time sort of questioning him and asking him, stuff about his work, or the kind of person who would do this and what the work would be like, and what their process would be like, and the challenges they would face, and sort of the way that, the conflicts that, would crop up as they were trying to do their job. And, obviously I had to do a lot of research into ALS. I try to use things that I don't have to research. So like, Ryan does Highland Games, and the Kilt series that is going to spin off, that's all about Highland Games athletes. My husband used to do Highland Games. And one of my best friends used to do Highland Games. So I know a lot about Highland Games, never done it myself, but I mean, I've tried this stuff, and I've watched them do it. I've sat around a lot of Highland Games in Texas, watching people in kilts throw heavy stuff. So that doesn't require too much research. But like for Sunny's garden and feed store in Nate's book, it's going to be loosely based on a couple of garden and feed stores that are near me. And I'm going to go hang out, wander around and see what it's like, and ask them about what kinds of chickens they stock, I guess.
You got to get the chickens right. I mean, it's Texas. You got to get the right ones, so they're going to come for you.
Exactly.
In the Kilt spinoff series, are we going to see Maggie give Highland Games a try?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, I haven't written them. I've got sort of a plan for them. I know who the heroes and heroines of each one is going to be, and I know what the tropes are going to be, but I haven't really gotten into the specifics yet. Obviously they're all Ryan's friends. So he and Maggie are going to be showing up. They're going to be at the, Highland Games and in and out of their lives. So probably at some point, maybe. She's not really an athletic, outdoorsy kind of, she isn't really, but I'm sure at some point she might pick up a weight. Maybe not a caber, but she might try to pick up a Bramer stone or something. She could probably do that pretty easy.
Just think like her like walking out and like ditching her shoes and being like, let me try this. And it just feels like something she would do.
Some parts of Maggie, not really Maggie, but Maggie is a little bit based on or inspired by Rebecca from Ted Lasso. And then she's also a little bit inspired by a friend of mine who's like 6'2", I think. I hope I didn't get her height wrong. She'll be mad. She's like 6'2", and she always wears like high heel shoes, and she's super athletic, and she does strong woman stuff. She's like in the last couple of years started doing strong woman stuff. So she's, it's not the same as Highland Games, but it's very similar. So she's literally like out there, picking up cars and stuff. Like she is something to behold.
It definitely got the Rebecca vibes. So I'm glad that was on the right track there. So what's it been like for you to be a self-published author and like the journey to get to this point so far?
I have really enjoyed it. I guess I'm a little bit of a control freak, which is why I was originally drawn to it. When I started wanting to publish, I was originally going to go the traditional route, and I was, writing query letters and making a database of all the agents I was going to query. And then I went to an RWA meeting, and an author was talking about how she used to be traditionally published, and then she switched to self-publishing, and just how much better it was for her, and how much more money she was making, and how she had all these books that her publishers wouldn't publish that suddenly she could just publish herself and make. And so I was like, you know what? I could do that. I used to work in marketing and advertising. I could probably figure this out. So I did a lot of research, and I really like the fact that if my books are going to fail, it's going to be because of decisions I made and not because of decisions someone else made that are outside of my control. Because that's really my thing, is that I didn't want to put all this effort into something and then have it bomb because someone decided it wasn't worth promoting, or that it wasn't going to be their priority anymore. And so I really like that, I'm doing it myself. And if I screw it up, then it's my screw up.
What's been the best advice you've gotten along your journey specifically for someone who is self-publishing?
That's a good question. Actually, probably Theodora Taylor is an author. She has a book that she published, like an advice book, and I saw her speak at a conference before she published the book. I can't remember what it's called, 7 Habits of something, but it's about universal fantasies basically, and how to incorporate. That's not the name of the book, and I wish I could remember the name of the book, but it's about how to incorporate this idea of universal fantasies into your stories, and how that will make them more appealing and really draw readers in and make them more excited and make your books more memorable. And it'll take you from writing these books that people are like, yeah, that was a very good book, I enjoyed reading it, to writing books where people are like, oh my God, that was amazing, I couldn't put it down. And so that was really useful for me as a sort of a way to sort of stop and say, oh wait, am I incorporating those sort of like those moments that make you like all excited and feel squishy inside when you read them? And so that's been super helpful.
On the flip side of that, what kind of advice do you have for someone who's considering trying to get a traditional publisher versus self-publishing, and like how they would go about deciding?
I guess it's really about what your priorities are and what your limitations are in terms of time and abilities. To some extent these days, I guess, even as a traditionally published author, you have to do some self-marketing, and you have to have a website, and you have to, do social media. And I know a lot of traditional published authors who are trying to make their own graphics and do stuff and trying to figure it out on their own. And but in general, if you're self-published, you have to do it all yourself, which requires a lot of time management and a lot of organization. And some of that stuff you can outsource, but outsourcing stuff requires a lot of managing too. So that's not, it's not like the time investment just goes away. So I guess you should just be really realistic about what you want to spend your time doing and what you can afford to spend your time doing. Because I think some people just, the idea of all the balls you have to have in the air as a self-published author is just a little bit more than some people really want to have to deal with.
Since this is Literary Hype, what books are you hyped about right now?
Right now, I actually am reading a Tessa Bailey book right now that I'm very much enjoying. I just reading was it Hook, Line, and Sinker is the first one? What's the first one in that series? Is that one? I get the two
Hook, Line,
titles.
and Sinker is second. The first one is It Happened One Summer.
That's the one I'm reading. It Happened One Summer. I don't know why I get those two books mixed up. I'm reading It Happened One Summer, and I'm really enjoying it very much. I read Book Lovers before that, and I really liked that one. I'm trying to think. My favorite self-published authors haven't like, I love Kylie Scott's books, and she hasn't put one out. I'm waiting for her next one, and I haven't read Sally Thorne's new book, and I really need to get on that because I love her stuff.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been fun.
Thanks to Susannah for joining me and talking about all things romance books and writing and self-publishing. It was a really fun conversation. If you want to get any of her books, check out the links down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps things out. Until next time, thanks for watching.